Here are the top 5 challenges that I've had when switching from Windows to macOS. I've recently switched from Windows to macOS. I bought my very first MacBook and I've been on Windows for 30 something years at this point. It's been an interesting journey going from Windows and all of the muscle memory that I have with keyboard shortcuts and everything into Mac. And there are some things that I have found have been very difficult, or at least challenging to break my habits of when going from this to that and learning something new. Old dog, new tricks. Starting with number 1, the command key versus the control key. My keyboard shortcuts, I live and die by these things. Control C, Control V, Control T, Control Shift T when in Brave or a browser, right? Trying to open the last tab that you just closed. It's been very difficult for me because for years I've used my pinky to run these keyboard shortcuts. Now I've got to run my thumb to run these keyboard shortcuts because it's not the control key anymore, it's the command key. Command Q, other things like that. The command is the new control key for me, and that has been a very, very difficult habit, muscle memory habit for me to break over the short period of time going from Windows to Mac. Challenge number 2, window management. In Windows, I can use the Windows key, and I can literally control how and where this window lives, whether it's full screen or not, whether it's on the left or the right side or a quarter of the screen, bottom left, top right, etc. On Apple, I don't get that same versatility, functionality, if you will. So it's been very interesting as I transition from Windows to Mac with the window management. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the stage manager and other things, being able to swipe up with 4 fingers and see different things. I like that. Command tab versus alt tab, at least that's in the same place. That's been simple, but as far as the window management, how much screen space it takes up. For example, if I maximize a window on Windows, I still get my bar across the bottom that has all my applications, the time, date, etc. On Mac, when I hit the green button, it goes full screen and everything else is gone. Yes, of course, you can manipulate between them, but it is very different how Windows manages its applications windows and how macOS manages its application windows. App quitting versus app closing. In Windows, you close a screen, it's gone. It may ask you, hey, did you want to do this action? Did you want to close it out? Because what you're about to have is going to be lost forever. With Mac, not all applications quit when you close the window. Some do. I have found that DaVinci Resolve, for example, when I close it out, it quits the app. But others, like the Messenger app or other things like that, when I close it, it doesn't actually close. It just kind of hides itself. Not so dissimilar, in fact, from the orange button up there, a little stoplight, right? You got red, yellow, and green. The yellow button, orange button, when you click it, it minimizes the window back into the tray, similar to what it would do on a Windows machine. But closing doesn't mean quitting. macOS, Command Q, or File Quit. Next, app installation and uninstallation. On Windows, it's very straightforward. You get the installation manager or the setup wizard, right? And it walks you through everything. And every application, just about every application, uses the same type of process to run you through it. On macOS, however, I have set up a number of applications on this: Lightroom, Photoshop, DaVinci Resolve, Signal, other things like that. Each one of them has had its own unique way of setting it up. There's a DNG file or something like that. There's a zip that might need to go to a DNG. Sometimes you need to just double click it. Sometimes you need to click and drag. The setup process, app installation process on macOS seems to be different almost every time. Uninstallation on Windows, app manager, applications manager, you can uninstall, right? You just find it, click your 3 dots, or right click, uninstall, and it asks you if you want to delete all the files associated with that particular application or program. macOS, apparently you drag it to the trash bin, but that doesn't necessarily get rid of all files. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It seems very clunky. It seems very not user-friendly when it comes to that. The installation and uninstallation wizard on Windows is something I'm very used to, and it's very different on macOS. Settings and preferences. In Windows, there's a bar across the bottom. If you wanted to get into a file menu or something like that, file, edit, view, etc., sometimes it's at the top, but not every application has it. If you maximize your window, it fills up the screen except that bottom bar like we talked about before. On macOS, however, that bar across the top is always there. Very similar to iPad, iPhone. It's very user-friendly. Again, going back to the ecosystem, kind of cross-platform, it makes sense. But it's very different and something that I'm going to have to get used to. It is, I don't want to say counterintuitive, but every time I change windows, so if I go from, let's say, Brave to Lightroom or to DaVinci, that bar is always there. But the options that I have within the bar will change based on the application that I'm in, except for the Apple icon. The Apple icon, my understanding, is, at least so far, the same regardless of whatever application you're in. So again, differences between Windows and Mac, that bar across the top, the settings, the preferences, how you access all of that stuff is just a bit more unique in Mac OS than it is on a Windows machine. And let's talk about the bonus thing. Going from Windows to Mac, the bonus thing that I'll talk about, because it's not necessarily applicable to all Windows machines and all Mac OS machines, is the trackpad. The trackpad on a Windows machine has certain functionalities, but the trackpad on a Mac laptop, specifically a MacBook, is very customizable, very intuitive. I really like the different gestures you can do in the same way that you could do them with an iPhone or an iPad, something like that. The trackpad on the Mac is tremendous, and it's very different than using the trackpad on a Windows machine. Windows machine is very limited. Mac OS, very robust, at least on a MacBook. And yeah, so that's been really unique and interesting to get used to as I switch from Windows to Mac. Hello, Future Toby coming to you. So as I was filming the B-roll shots for the trackpad gestures and whatnot, I actually found functionality in the trackpad gesture, at least on this particular Windows machine. This is a Samsung laptop, and I was very surprised to see this functionality. I didn't know it existed. 3 fingers actually does something, sliding left and right, almost like Alt-Tab. 4 fingers up actually brings up something like Stage Manager in macOS. 4 fingers down minimizes everything back to your desktop. There is some functionality, it seems, in the trackpad, at least on this particular Windows machine. So if that was going to be your reason for going from Windows to Mac, take a look at your trackpad before you go too far. So there you go. There are the top 5 things, plus the bonus, that I have found either challenging or unique when going from a Windows machine to a Mac machine as a lifelong Windows user. On to the next one.